Hi, Craig Urquhart here. Welcome to another edition of Berlin Conversations. Today I'm extremely excited to have with me the pianist and conductor Benjamin Hochman, who's a gentleman I met a couple of years ago in New York City, and I've had the pleasure to get to know and follow his amazing career and his musicianship. So welcome, Benjamin.
Hi, Craig.
So great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
Oh, great. It's super. So you are a pianist, an extremely well-recognized and phenomenal pianist, and you've recently taken up conducting. Is that correct? Or have you been doing it for a while?
I came to conducting about almost a decade ago now.
Oh, really? Gosh, okay.
Yeah, so it's been developing in the last years.
Okay, so I like to ask questions about the early years. Mm-hmm. So you were born in Israel.
That's right. I was born in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And I was born to a family of academics. My parents were professors of literature. And so I was raised in a home that appreciated music, loved music, but was not a professional musician's household. Mm-hmm. And I came to music in a way by accident, by chance. I had a woman who was looking after me, who taught me how to play just some little folk tunes really on the piano one afternoon. And she called my parents up and said, he should have some music lessons. He has a really good ear. Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's how it all started. The rest is history.
Mm-hmm. But how did you get, what motivated you? Not just because she said you should have lessons. There must have been something in you that motivated you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, in my memory, I always loved music.
Yeah, well,
and I think once somehow that was recognized and I started having music lessons, I just took off. I just loved the experience. I don't think anyone had to tell me to practice. I just had some passion for the music itself.
And when you started, what were you drawn to? Did you begin to explore literature early on? How old were you, by the way?
I think I was five. When I started playing. And I think it was just, for lack of a better way to describe it, just music itself, the act of making music, learning the instrument, learning music and sharing it with others and playing with others from an early age. That was already
you did. You were very fortunate.
Sharing music with others. Yeah.
So that must have been fun.
It was really fun. And I think looking back on my childhood and adolescent years as well, growing up in Jerusalem, I think all of us, and by us I mean those of us who were raised there within that musical culture, we were very, very lucky in a way that I really didn't realize till much later. And what I mean by that is that already as a teenager, I had a chance to play in master classes for people like Murray Pariah, Isaac Stern, Leon Fleischer, all these legendary figures who came to the Jerusalem Music Center to work with us. And we were just kids.
Oh, amazing.
But we were just very, very fortunate. And I think the musical education we received, not only from the luminaries who came from outside, but also from the distinguished musicians who were teaching us in the Israeli musical culture. They were just phenomenal.
Did you ever have a chance to hear Leonard Bernstein, or are you too young?
Unfortunately, I never heard him live.
But were you too young, or?
I was born in 80, so I don't know whether...
He was 10, you were 10.
When did he pass?
He passed in 1990, you were a little young.
I wish I could have heard him.
Yeah, no, I just wonder, because he would go to Jerusalem.
I know.
And Tel Aviv. I mean, he was a big supporter of Israel then, and...
I'm aware of that.
And he was close friends with the mayor of Jerusalem,
Teddy Kollek. I knew Teddy Kollek.
Oh, did. He's a wonderful man. I got to know him also. An incredible human being and leadership, which I would love to see again in the world. But we're not going to diverge, and we're going to stay focused on...
We'll be disciplined.
We'll be disciplined.
Musicians are good at discipline.
Yes. And so what was it like growing up in Jerusalem in that musical environment?
It was really amazing. I mean, I feel that I've been quite fortunate and even blessed, I would say, to have incredible teachers throughout my life. But that was true from the beginning. And so one of the really formative teachers for me is a woman named Esther Narkis, who is still alive and well at 95.
Good for her.
And she is a force. And she was a very devoted teacher. I worked with her from the age of, I think it was 8 till 15. Those were very meaningful, significant
That's very
years.
formative years, yes.
And so I think she shaped my musical worldview. And I think at every point after that as well, all the teachers I had, Immanuel Kosowski, Claude Frank,
You started with Claude Frank.
Richard Good.
Richard Good.
At a much later moment, Alan Gilbert. You know, these were really the principal teachers I had. All of them were remarkable. And I think others who were not officially my teachers, but who influenced me very much, there are many, but including Leon Fleischer, including Mitsuko Ushida and Andras Schiff. And just, I've been very fortunate with the mentors I've had.
I like those mentors because that, you know, that's a kind of almost, I would say almost an old world group of teachers in terms of the approach to repertoire in music. I mean, Andras Schiff, we know he focuses on, you know, Beethoven, Bach, Schubert. You know, he's very, I don't think of him as a Rachmaninoff pianist. Am I correct in that?
I think that's a good observation.
Yeah, and I think
Fair to say.
And I think he would be very comfortable with that.
I think so, yeah.
And then Leon Fleischer, of course. I mean, remarkable teacher. I have friends that studied with him at Peabody, and he actually, I think he may have done one concert with Bernstein, but his recordings of the Beethoven concertos with George Szell, they're just remarkable.
As are the Brahms.
And the Brahms piano concertos, amazing. Yeah. So that sounds like you really had a very incredibly strong base of really working with some of the best in the field.
I feel really fortunate.
Yeah, but that also says something about the talent that you had.
Well, thank you.
And I know you're going to be modest, and that's okay. I appreciate modesty, but when did you really begin to flower? I mean, you started at 6, and then you said you were working with this wonderful teacher, and then you started having master classes with these remarkable musicians. Yes.
I mean, I think a kind of a pivotal moment for me was when I left Israel at the age of 17 to go to Curtis in Philadelphia. And I spent 4 years studying at the Curtis Institute of Music. And I think those years were very important and formative as well. You know, these are all different
informative
chapters.
and important for a lot of people, including my friend Leonard Bernstein, who spent years there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an amazing place. And I mean, sometimes I like to joke that
Tell us about Curtis, because I don't think a lot of people know what Curtis Institute of Music is.
Yeah, so Curtis is a very small music school in Philadelphia. I think at any given time, there's something like 150 students all together in the school.
And it's only by invitation, is that correct?
Well, we audition.
Yeah.
And very few are fortunate to be accepted. So I think in my year, we were 5 pianists who were accepted, including some names you will know very well, like Jonathan Biss and Lang Lang. We all came the same year. And I remember as a 17-year-old, I was totally surprised and amazed to receive a Steinway piano in my apartment for the duration of my studies.
That's what I mean.
And you know, I mean,
it's basically 100% scholarship,
that's
isn't
right.
it? Yeah, you're invited
That's
to
right.
come and study, and they take really good care of you.
Yeah, no, it's really amazing. And I mean, the conditions are outstanding, but I think even more than that, if one could even say even more than that, it's the caliber of the faculty and the colleagues, plus the conditions we just described. And I remember, first of all, my teacher, Claude Frank, who I absolutely adored as a musician and as a human being, you know, he was such on the one hand, such a gentle human being and such a gentleman, but such a demanding musician of himself and of his students. And so that was an incredible experience to spend those years with him. But for example, I remember playing for Felix Galimir, who had premiered works by Berg and Schoenberg. I mean, at that time, Felix was he was not a young man,
no,
but
obviously.
I remember the coachings I had with him on Brahms' B major trio. It's just one example. I remember Rostropovich coming to conduct the orchestra. I remember hearing the Philadelphia Orchestra every week. I remember hearing Mahler II with a young Simon Rattle. just truly formative musical experiences. And I think when I started spending summers at the Marlborough Music Festival in Vermont, which happened right around the time that I graduated.
Why don't you explain what Marlborough is? Because it's a very unique space too. It's
Indeed.
a wonderful place.
Indeed. I mean, I think in a certain way, Marlborough and Curtis have always been kind of friendly collaborators in the musical sphere. Marlborough is a festival in Vermont in a very idyllic setting that was founded by Rudolf Serkin and others. So it was really a group of very distinguished, mostly Jewish immigrants from Europe who had escaped the Nazis and created something magical in the countryside in Vermont. When I was...
And let's, for some of our listeners, Vermont is like heaven on earth. It is so beautiful.
It totally is.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
It's
and,
gorgeous.
And there's something really pristine about it.
It's very New England, you know.
Yeah.
And I always think of Carl Ruggles when I think of Vermont, because he, you know, it's just this, it's incredible place.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
It is. And I think of it as kind of, you know, one of the best sides of America and American culture. The combination of nature and New England and openness to new things and curiosity
And Marlborough is mostly a chamber music society.
Correct.
And so
That's right.
What were some of the musicians that you've worked with? You still go to Marlborough?
I haven't been in recent years,
But you would go back in a flash, right?
with great pleasure, and I'm very friendly with,
of course.
with many of the musicians there. And it really became kind of a musical family to me, I would say. So when I started going there, Marlborough was run by Mitsuko Ushida and Richard Good. Richard was officially my teacher at the time. Mitsuko was also a very important influence for me. And for example, I always played with David Sawyer, who was the cellist of the Guarneri Quartet.
Right, yes, incredible.
And that was also a formative experience.
I'm sure, yeah.
But there were many. I mean, really. Actually, I remember the very first thing I performed at Marlborough was the Archduke Trio of Beethoven.
Oh, just the Archduke Trio.
And not only that, but I remember that when we were preparing to play it, and that was with David Sawyer.
Yeah.
I remember someone came up to me at lunch and said, you know, this hasn't been performed since Mr. Serkin played it.
Oh, God, no pressure.
No pressure. So, and you know, that's very typical for Marlborough. But it was a very special place to be. And I think, again, these are all musical experiences that shaped the way I think of music, and that's been really meaningful.
So when you say how I think of music,
what does that mean?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, what does that mean? I think for me, it means a very high level of respect for the art form and for the craft of making music. Part of that means trying to cultivate a deep understanding of the music itself and searching for some truth in the music and cultivating the tools to express that. Of course, that includes technique, but it goes way beyond that. And hopefully really communicate something real to the audience, because to my mind, music is all about communication and sharing with other human beings. And that's what I endeavor to do throughout my life.
And when you list the name of the people that you've worked with, these are very thoughtful musicians. And I really want to ask you about what's it like to work with Isaac, because I knew Isaac. Lenny Bernstein and Isaac were very close friends, but Isaac wasn't a pianist. So when you were in a master class with Isaac, who was an incredible violinist.
A force, yeah.
He premiered Bernstein's Serenade in Venice. I don't know if you know that, you probably do. And what was it like to work with a violinist in a master class as a pianist?
It's a great question. You know, it's funny, I remember it was 1998 when I first worked with Isaac Stern, and Mr. Stern had what he called chamber music encounters, which happened once a year in the summertime, and it alternated years between Carnegie Hall and the Jerusalem Music Center. And at the time I had a piano trio that we had formed at Curtis, and we applied to this festival and we were accepted, and so we came. And we always, ever since that experience, we described it as a shooting squad. And what I mean by that, what we meant by that, is that it wasn't just playing for Mr. Stern. It was usually 8 or 10 or 12 musicians of his caliber, including Leon Fleischer and members of the Emerson Quartet and Gil Kalish and all these true Henry Meyer, these legendary figures.
No
and you
pressure.
Would, again, no pressure. And you would play, and then each of them would tell you what you're doing wrong.
Or right.
Yes, or right. They wouldn't say that part so often.
Oh, really?
It depended on the individual. I mean, in my memory, it was a very intense experience of being able to, I mean, first of all, even to understand what they were saying and how to respond to it in real time. Again, I was 18 at the time.
Yeah, God, I can't imagine.
But it was an awesome experience in the true sense of that word, which is so often misused. Awesome in the sense of really significant and inspiring. And I always loved working with Mr. Stern. It was intense, but he somehow took a liking to us. And in fact, I'm eternally grateful to him because the very first time I played at Carnegie Hall was at his invitation. And it was the very first time was at a kind of special event for donors. He must have been, checking us out. And then shortly after that,
playing for donors is a very big deal. I must tell you,
Absolutely.
as you know. And
Absolutely.
Because, they keep the hall going.
Absolutely. And, and so of course I took it very seriously. And then shortly after that came an invitation for an official debut at Carnegie Hall. I think I was 20 at that time.
Did you play the big hall or?
No, first it was in what they called Weill Recital Hall. I think it's still called Weill. And what I remember about that concert was, I'm skipping around in the timeline a little bit, but that was in 2000. I was 20 years old. And I remember that thankfully, without my knowing it, Mitsuko Oshida had been invited by one of the donors. And so she was in the audience. At that time, we still smoked. I used to smoke cigarettes.
Okay.
And so I remember being at the back door entrance.
How old-fashioned.
Very old-fashioned, very passé. And so I was having my cigarette at halftime. And I remember her coming. And she just came right up to me and she said, "How would you like to come to Marlborough?" Out of the blue. And
she didn't say, "Would you loan me a Marlboro?"
She must have quit by then. Anyway, so, I mean, these are all anecdotes, but
No, they're important.
But these are meaningful moments in one's career.
So when Isaac worked with the pianists, did he work on tone or did he work on the long line, or what did he bring as a string player to a pianist?
It's a great question. What I recall, first of all, I recall that when it was a chamber music setting, like a piano trio, he would often work more with the string players.
Of course, yeah.
Which was natural and was every bit as useful just to hear him. For example, I remember him saying, he would say to violinists, "Pick up the damn fiddle." He was just talking about how he wanted them to hold the instrument, and some of it was technique. But I also remember, first of all, there was just something about his presence. He was so imposing. We all knew how much power he had, but what I mean by that is not only influence, but just that his presence and his experience spoke volumes. And when someone like that is in the room, you respond in a different way to whatever he's saying. So, and I think there was also a kind of, I would say, a discipline, a musical discipline having to do with not only the execution of the music, but a kind of rigor of ensemble playing, a rigor of, sound quality, technique, phrasing, conviction. I think having real conviction just in how you play a phrase, that you're 1,000,000% convinced that that's how it goes. You might be wrong, but at least you're convinced about it.
Conviction is very important.
Very, yeah.
As you know, I spent time with Bernstein, and there's performances that people disagree with of his, like the slow movement of the Tchaikovsky Sixth Symphony. That's very controversial, but it's so convincing the way he does it, or the Enigma Variations, which was very slow and very controversial. But he had his conviction, and he felt he was doing it. He had something to say.
Yes.
And I think that's what you're saying, that
Absolutely.
Isaac's, if you have something to say, you say it.
Absolutely. And I think, to my mind, one of the things about music is that it's not an exact science.
It's not a science.
It's not a science, it's an art. And therefore, by definition, it's open to interpretation. And yet, with many of the great composers who I admire the most, like Beethoven, Bach, I think there is some kind of essential truth to be sought after.
Could you elaborate on that? I know that's not a fair question, but I'm going to ask you. Because I understand what you're saying, but I would like to hear you articulate it and what you believe, the central truth about Beethoven. Bach, I understand it could be more of a religious fervor.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is, I think of music as a language.
Which it is.
And as such, it has syntax, it has meaning. I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a professor of aesthetics or anything like that. But on a basic level, if you take a Bach fugue or a movement of a Beethoven piano sonata, it has structure, it has discrete parts, it's built in a certain way, the phrases connect in a certain way, even where the emphasis lies, it's really like a language. And that's something that I feel we discover with time. It doesn't reveal itself right away. And it takes effort. It takes sometimes years of thinking and rethinking and performing and making mistakes, whatever that means, and having new insights. And I mean, for me, this is one of the most rewarding and amazing things about building a life in music, is that we have this privilege to come back to the great masterpieces again and again.
It's always fresh.
It's always fresh.
That reminds me of a short story I'll tell you. You may have heard it, but I'll never forget the one morning Leonard Bernstein was going to rehearse with the Vienna Philharmonic Beethoven's 7th Symphony. This is a symphony that I think it's documented he performed more than any other symphony. And it was towards the end of his life. It was in 1989, I believe, or 88. And he was going to rehearse Beethoven's 7th with the Vienna Philharmonic, and he had the utmost respect for those. They were the gentlemen then, because there was no women in the orchestra yet. And I walked into his suite to make sure he was ready to go to rehearsal. And he was in his bathrobe, a stack of cigarettes like this, coffee pots. And I said, "You're due at rehearsal in 35 minutes. He says, "I can't rehearse this piece. I've been up all night. It's all new to me." Beethoven 7th, all new.
Isn't that touching?
And that's
it.
That's the great gift. I think, I'm not as I'm a composer and a pianist. I'm not as accomplished as you are as a pianist, but I constantly read music and go through it, and it's always amazing that there's always so much to find.
It's endless.
Endless. So when let's talk about, you just recently recorded the last 3 Beethoven piano sonatas.
109 and 110.
110 and 111, which I personally feel are like pillars of the piano literature. I remember hearing Rudolf Zirkin do them at Carnegie Hall, and this was later in his life, and he got lost in the opening of 110. And he just stopped and started over. And it was beautiful, but I mean, it happens, And I also heard one of the greatest performances I ever heard of that was by Christoph Eschenbach, very early on, when he was a young pianist, and it was at Carnegie Hall also. And it was just spellbinding. But when you approach pillars of literature like 109, 110, and 111, where do you begin?
Wow. It's a great question. just a small correction, that 111 actually I haven't recorded yet. I recorded 109 and 110.
I'm sorry.
No, that's totally
But
fine.
111 will come.
I certainly hope so. And actually, I did also, of course, play the three of them as a trilogy many times. In the end, I chose to record 109 and 110 with some other things in the middle, including some contemporary music from George Benjamin and some Renaissance music. But be that as it may.
That's a wonderful recording. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Thank you, Craig. How do I approach it? Well, first of all, I mean, these are actually pieces that I've spent many, many years
Of course,
playing.
yeah.
I mean, I think 110, I learned, I first studied as a teenager. I think in fact, now I remember, it was 110 I performed in Paris at the Louvre. I think I was maybe 18 or 19 years old. And in fact, I recall that the woman who ran the series at that time called me up and said, "Are you sure you want to do this?"
Yeah, it's very precocious.
"Are you sure you want to do this? We had Alfred Brendel play this recently." And quite foolishly, I said, no, I'll do this. And I did. I think I have a recording of that concert somewhere. I haven't listened to it in ages. But this is just to say that, that's an example of a piece that I was drawn to at a young age, perhaps younger than I should have been performing it. Maybe yes, maybe no, who knows? But it's a piece that I have kept coming back to over the years many, many times, and that was the case with 109 as well. So part of it for me is this feeling of, I don't know if familiarity is exactly the right word, although that's part of it. It's also familiarity. It's just coming back to it again and again and discovering new things every time. And that process, by definition, to me is endless, which is also, for me, the challenge with recording, because at a certain point you have to say, okay, this is my interpretation at this moment.
At this moment, yeah.
And one has to accept that it may be more good, more bad, anything in the middle. It's not so much about judgment, but this is what I have to say at this moment. And, I keep coming back to these pieces. I'm playing one.
With 110, you have that Lamentosa,
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just so beautiful.
It's devastating. It's
devastating.
So deep.
It's so deep.
It's so deep. And this is what I love about this music, is that it's so deep and it expresses so much. And I think, although we've agreed not to turn to politics and other dark things, but I think it's also good to acknowledge that the world, I can't say anything profound about it except to say that the world is very complex and also very tragic these days. And I feel that that's also part of what we have to say as artists, is to respond to the zeitgeist, to respond to the things that we're all feeling in the air and in more concrete ways too. And I think that's our job, that's our calling as artists, is to express things, and sometimes those things are painful, and to give voice to that in the same way that Beethoven did 200 years ago.
Right.
And others are doing today. So, that's what it's all about.
I keep coming back to these three sonatas because, for me, I think they're like a giant pillar of
Absolutely
piano literature. And that's not to say that there aren't others, but for me, this is there. But also, I wonder what you think. Beethoven really had lost most of his hearing by that time. And I often wonder if he was hearing a sound world that we weren't able to hear, especially in 111 when you get to this adagietto.
Yes.
That is just a sound world that is contemporary today, as avant-garde as it was then.
Yes.
It's sonic, it's jazzy, it's, you can talk
epic.
about it. But I just wonder if that lack of external noise allowed him, it's a question no one can answer.
It's a great question. I was going to say, who knows?
Yeah,
but I love the way you're thinking. It's so interesting. I know there are also, scientists and doctors who have approached this question and, in terms of thinking really of what human beings who suffer from deafness, what they experience, what it means to hear. That I'm not equipped to speak about, but I do feel that I mean, part of it with Beethoven, I think, definitely just has to do with the experience he had as a human being and the sense of loss, profound loss that we know he experienced, not only on a physical level, but on an emotional level, and the kind of despair he felt, and even considering suicide, taking his own life, and somehow overcoming that and continuing to create throughout his life. So, I mean, what interests me on a human level is that aspect of his personality and his life experience. And on the other hand, going back to what you were talking about, I think for all of us as musicians, we are constantly developing our inner ear, which means how we think about sound, how we create sound, how we think about sound quality, how to create a beautiful sound or different colors, and how to think about music itself, which is inextricably linked with sound. And so, okay, we're here and Beethoven is up there, but I think there's a kind of comradeship that all of us who are in this world of music feel regarding this kind of aspiring, to get more and more advanced in our understanding. And maybe this links back, it's maybe a little bit too much philosophy, but links back to what we said about, when we talk about seeking truth in music, and that we're searching for something. And I think whether it's the musical language or the sound itself, these are musical ideas, and there's a kind of education and evolution that we're seeking, and it never ends. That's the cool thing. That's the best part.
As I was telling my partner, my husband, I'm extremely grateful I can read music. It's, I'm not very good with languages. I've lived in Germany. I don't know for how long. I'm still struggling with it. It's very complicated for me. But I just feel so fortunate that I can sit down and read through music.
Amazing.
It's a gift.
Absolutely.
And I don't mean I'm gifted. It's a gift. It's a different.
I understand exactly what you mean.
And it's incredible. Now, we've been talking about Beethoven, but you're also drawn to other composers. And so you don't have to rank them number 1 to 10, but who are you drawn to besides Beethoven?
Bach is very important for me. I play Bach basically every day.
Which Bach?
Well, actually, this past year, I've been playing the 3-part inventions, the sinfonias.
They're fantastic.
Which I adore. And actually, now that we've entered 2026, I've been spending a lot of time with the well-tempered clavier, both books. And I've kind of, actually, in recent years, I've just developed the habit of, circling through them. Every day I play sometimes 1 or 2 or 4, and it helps everything. It helps my emotions, it helps my spirit, and
centers you.
Yeah, it's just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. And I mean, I'm also performing Bach. For example, the C minor partita is in my repertoire this season.
I love that piece. Okay.
And it's just...
Argerich, when she plays, oh my God, that's such an amazing experience. I don't know if I would play it that way, but I think her performance is amazing, so incredible. And I could never play it the way she does, but it's an incredible piece.
It is. So Bach is very important for me. Mozart is very important for me.
The sonatas or the concertos?
Both. Actually, some years ago, I played the cycle of the complete piano sonatas.
Oh, wow.
I did that several places around the world. I also recorded some Mozart concertos with the English Chamber Orchestra that I played and directed from the keyboard. But I mean, I adore Mozart. The operas, for me, are just some of the pinnacles of human creation. The string quintets, one can go on and on.
Yeah.
I mean, Mozart.
Mozart.
Schubert is another composer I care very deeply about.
I love Schubert, and it's funny, you don't hear him often on stage. People don't play those sonatas very often, and they're monumental. And again, we have was it last 3 or 4 sonatas? The C minor, the B flat major, A major.
That's right.
And again, they're pinnacles of piano literature as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Schubert, for me, there's something very, how to say it without sounding banal, but I mean, there's something so touching on an emotional level about his music. And I think, yeah, it's one of those things, I'm not sure I can explain it, but it's just so, you know.
And God, what a composer, and he died so
Well, that's
young.
part of it. That's right. I mean, he lived such a very, very short life, dying at 31, and wrote, you know, hundreds and hundreds of songs, and he just created all the time. And actually, this season, I was playing a piano sonata of his.
Which one?
It's called, it's nicknamed the Reliquie. It's in 2 movements.
I know that one.
C major,
C major,
C major and C minor.
I studied that once.
It's an incredible piece, and what's so interesting about it, in the same way that the Unfinished Symphony, which is also in 2 movements, you know, I have the feeling, and I'm not a musicologist, but I just have the feeling that he was creating so quickly. He didn't have time to look back, and sometimes we don't really know why he started a piece and didn't finish it, but you know, whatever the reason, there was this sense that he was racing against the clock, you know, whether he knew or not about his own health, who knows. But, you know, this feeling of creating every day and writing more and more great music. And I found it really very, very touching, just for me to play this sonata these past months.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Is there a recording yet?
Not yet, maybe soon.
Good.
And Schumann is another one, and for me, I would say a little bit in a similar vein to Schubert on the emotional level. And with Schumann, maybe even more so. There's something just so deep and so emotional about his music. And
Well, he was an emotional person.
right, and of course we know he suffered a lot.
He suffered from
he suffered from mental
depression,
illness,
yeah, mental illness.
and that was terribly sad, but you know, just some of the most incredible music ever written. So I mean, these are some of the composers. I mean, I adore Ravel and Bartók and Berg. And,
I was going to ask you next.
I mean, there are many others.
You also not just play the romantics and the classics, you have made it important in your life to play 20th century music and now contemporary music.
Yes, I love doing that. And you know, this is, I would say, another side of my musical personality or musical experience, that I've developed close working relationships, I would say, especially with Kurtag, the great Hungarian composer, and also with George Benjamin, another one of our great composers, and many others. But I really love the experience of playing new music and working with living composers and commissioning new works, and I find something really exciting about that. And I feel that it's also, I would say it's essential. I couldn't do without it. I couldn't only play Bach and Beethoven, because I really feel that one feeds off the other and informs the other. And that's one of the reasons that very often when I create recital programs, orchestral programs, recordings, I like very much to juxtapose things that may seem on the surface very different. You know, we spoke about my recent recording with late Beethoven sonatas and Renaissance music by Josquin and George Benjamin and Dowland. These are things that may seem very disparate and contrasting on the surface. And what I like to discover is that sometimes these contrasts actually spark new observations about the new and the old. So I like this back and forth and this kind of curation.
Wow, it's great. It's great. So you have a lot on your plate. You're a very busy person. You travel all over the world performing, and I can't keep up with you on Facebook. It exhausts me. I don't know how you do it. When do you find time to practice? Or
all the time.
I mean,
someone has to do it. So
I know, but
it.
when? I mean, you're on an airplane. I mean, you probably study when you're on an airplane, or just chill sometimes too. It's probably important.
Be one or the other
in
in both. Yeah.
But you have a concert coming up here in Berlin soon.
Yeah, there are a few coming up in Berlin.
And you're playing with the wonderful violinist Noah Bendix-Bagley.
Yes, that's right.
Who works with the Berlin Phil.
That's right. He's one of their concert masters.
One of the concert masters, and wonderful. Yeah. He's an American. And that's great. That's in a couple of weeks, isn't it?
That's coming up a little bit later in the season, in June.
June, yeah, that's a couple of weeks.
Noah and I, I guess it'll be here sooner than we know it. But yeah, Noah and I will be playing both in Berlin and in Munich. And we're looking forward to that. But before then, so many things still to come. Actually, I just came back from a wonderful week in Madeira in Portugal, where I conducted the orchestra. We did a Beethoven Fourth Symphony and Brahms violin concerto. It was a really wonderful week. And tomorrow I fly to New York. I play a recital on Friday in New York. And yeah, the schedule is very, very full, and I'm very happy about that.
It's terrific. And how do you maintain? How do you not get tired? I
well,
really
sometimes I get tired. I like to run. I go running. I practice yoga and meditation. I try to lead a healthy lifestyle as best I can. You know, I don't always fully succeed, but you know, I try to get enough rest. I try to eat healthy. I'm vegetarian. But I think actually the bigger part is that, and this is something I've been realizing more and more, that community is really, really important to me. And so the friendships I have, friends and family all over the world, are very, very meaningful to me. And that's a big part of my life. And I think, you know, wherever I am, whether I'm in Budapest or Colorado or Vancouver or Vienna, you know, I'll play a concert and I'll call my friend, or I'll call my mom, and those things are...
It's community.
It's really important.
Yeah, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, staying connected.
Do you have any recordings coming up?
I haven't decided on my next recording.
Okay.
I'll be honest. It's, you know, it feels, for me with recording, first of all, I love doing it, especially once I get...
Well, maybe we should explain that doing a recording is very different than performing.
Absolutely.
And how would you contrast the two of them?
Well, I mean, for me, the biggest difference is that a live performance is in the moment. And there's something beautiful about that. Whatever good or bad you do in the moment, and I say that, you know, we're very self-critical as artists.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? I don't mean only wrong notes or mistakes, but I'm talking on a more profound level. You know, are we doing justice to the music? But we always try, and I think the quality of being in the moment with human beings in a room, and it doesn't matter whether that room holds 3,000 people or 20 people, that quality of connection in the moment is what makes live performance so powerful. Recording is a different thing. First of all, when I record, there's no one there.
There's you and
there's me and the piano
or
the orchestra and the, you know, the wonderful record producer, and that already is a different experience. And then there's the fact that it's not that I just play a Beethoven sonata once, good or bad, anything in between, and done with it, as it is in a live performance. But we're trying to create, let's say, the best version of that moment, of those days in the recording studio. I happen to love recording. It's not the easiest process psychologically.
I have a question to ask you about recording, because, you know, I do recordings of my own music, and sometimes I'm in a recording session and I will just stop because I think I'm doing a horrible job of what I'm trying to say. And then I listen to the playback and I go, why did I stop? Does that ever happen to you?
That can happen. That can happen. I mean, the thing is that we're, in a way, we're not very good judges of our own playing some of the time. And that's a kind of paradox, because actually this is something I remember Fleischer used to talk about, is that there's a quality of what we do as performers that we have to constantly kind of toggle back and forth between being inside ourselves and outside ourselves in terms of listening. You know, going back to what we talked about before, you know, what does it sound like? What am I actually sounding like? And that's a kind of subtle thing, you know, to be able to judge, you know, even a tempo. To judge it, is the tempo too fast, too slow, just right, you know, like the Goldilocks, the porridge. It's an important aspect of the art, and it's not easy to master. But I mean, tempo is just one example. It could be anything. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have to develop a very discerning ear and thought about our own playing. And yet we're not always, our judgment is not infallible, as it is in life, right? We all have blind spots. And so that aspect of recording is interesting because it's a kind of partnership with the tonmeister, with the record producer, because I rely on them to say, okay, measure 223, let's do that again. Pay attention to the left hand. And again, we're not talking about wrong notes. We're talking about something more subtle. We're talking about try it this way, you know, maybe bring out this voice or try the phrasing a little bit differently. And that's actually the aspect of recording that I like very much, is that you can try things out and you can be spontaneous within the context, which is not a spontaneous context, which is an interesting paradox.
That's
you know, you do a lot of takes and you try it this way, you try it that way, you're always trying to play your best. And something, as they say, comes out in the wash.
So it is a collaborative effort when you're making a recording. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And it's a different kind of collaboration.
Yeah.
The live performance, it's you and the audience.
Yes.
And with the recording, it's you, the team, and you're the hardest on yourself.
Yeah. Sure. And I think for that reason, or that's one of the reasons that, you know, I don't make a recording every day. It's something that, although I love doing it, it's also a great responsibility. And I feel very often, it's not that I always record pieces that I've been playing for years and years. Sometimes there are situations where I record something that I've come to more recently. But very often when I come to record a piece, it's something that I've spent a lot of time considering and reconsidering. And that allows, ironically, for a kind of spontaneity. That's how I think of it.
Now, I don't want to end this conversation just yet because I want to talk about conducting.
Oh, yeah.
That is a completely different can of worms. Yes, a porridge of worms.
to mix our metaphors.
Oh, my God. So what drew you, or what, I guess, seduced you into becoming, to conducting, and how is that different than playing the solo piano? Those are tough questions.
These are, I mean, we could have the whole conversation just about that, and it would just be the tip of the iceberg. Okay, so I came to conducting in an interesting way. I was always interested in the art of conducting. In fact, I remember hearing my own personal first experience as a listener of hearing a live performance of The Rite of Spring with the Jerusalem Symphony when I was, I don't know, maybe 14 or 15, which left a profound impression on me. But so conducting always interested me. And when I was a student in Philadelphia at Curtis, you know, I attended the Philadelphia Orchestra concerts religiously. And also there was
Who was the music director?
At that time it was Wolfgang Sawallisch.
Yeah, okay, wonderful.
And there were so many, I mean, he was wonderful, but there were so many other great guest conductors who came. So I think those years were very formative in terms of my experience of listening to a great orchestra. And there was also a very important conductor, a professor, the teacher of conducting at Curtis, Otto Werner Müller, who was an imposing musical figure. And I used to attend his lessons. I wasn't a student of his, but I was curious and I would go just to listen. So somewhere in my consciousness, I knew that I was interested in conducting. But what actually happened was that in my mid-30s, I actually became very sick and I suffered from an autoimmune condition which affected my left arm.
Oh, shit.
And so there were a couple of years where I was not able to play at all. And there was a real question of not knowing whether I would be able to come back to playing. And it's a long story, but the good news is that, first of all, the best news is that now I'm perfectly healthy, I'm playing better than ever, but the other good news is that I had a great doctor who had a kind of critical, difficult moment in that process of when I was sick said to me, have you ever thought of conducting? And I'm very grateful to him because that kind of sparked something in my mind. And so what happened was, during this very dark, difficult period in my life, where I wasn't sure if I would be able to come back to playing, I started studying conducting. And I was very fortunate as a quite a bit older student, I was already 35, I went back to study at Juilliard and studied conducting for 2 years with Alan Gilbert. And so for me personally, this process of coming to conducting and studying conducting very seriously for a couple of years during a time that I wasn't able to perform as a pianist, it all came together in a certain way. And I was really lucky that I regained my health. So by the time I had graduated from Juilliard, I was back to playing the piano and I was wearing the additional conductor's hat. So that's kind of the short story, which I think is, just something I like to share because it's something that happened to me and it allowed for something really interesting to happen in my life.
So when you stand in front of an orchestra, it's different than a keyboard.
Totally different.
And what is that experience like? Because there's anywhere from 60 to 120 musicians in front of you. And what is that emotional, what's that like for you to go out and have that responsibility?
It's thrilling. When it goes well, it's an amazing feeling. When it goes less well, you learn from it and get better. And I love conducting, and it's a wonderful challenge. As you said, it's very different from playing. On the one hand, music is music, so when I conduct a Beethoven symphony, the same musical values that I believe in are there whether I'm conducting a symphony or playing a piano sonata. But the actual method by which I deliver the music is completely different because, as you know, a conductor makes no sound. We have no ability to make a sound. We are collaborating with an orchestra. We are leading an orchestra. So in that sense, conducting introduces so many other areas, such as leadership, communication, psychology. There's also a very important physical aspect, obviously, how your physical gesture can convey information and shape the sound. So it's a wonderful challenge.
I've never conducted, so I can only imagine. I've only been in the back seat,
Yeah.
And
but one of the things I really love about it also, apart from the repertoire, and I love the experience of working with a large group of musicians. And the way I often think of it is, I feel that my job is, first of all, to do the utmost respect to the great music. And like we spoke before, to be able to communicate that. But more importantly, in the setting of an orchestral concert, is to lead the orchestra in such a way that they can give their absolute best. And that's when it works, it's an incredible thing. And the question is always how. And that's our job to figure out, and you're working with human beings and you're facilitating, allowing, hopefully inspiring. And, very often when you get in front of a great orchestra, these musicians have dedicated their lives to playing these great works. And you better know those scores
inside and out,
really, really well, so that you do justice to the music and to the musicians playing.
And it's also one thing I love about that is that it's fostering a sense of community.
Absolutely.
And it's humanity coming together.
Absolutely.
To make something. Beauty.
And it's a joyful experience. No matter which emotions are being expressed, the experience you're describing of communal music making is joyful by definition. And I think there's almost an energetic quality to it. In other words, it's an exchange of energy. Music is an exchange of energy, and when you're working with an orchestra, you feel it. You feel it in your body. You feel the sound, and you feel the emotion. And in that sense, as conductors, we are also kind of lightning rods or conduits for the music, and that's a privilege.
Well, I think that's a really wonderful place to stop for today. I could talk for hours with you about this.
Me too.
This is great.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you, and please come back and we can
pleasure,
talk
Craig.
about some other things.
Looking forward to it.
And maybe next time you can come, you can play something on the piano. I'm
like
not going to
that.
ask you to do that today, but
Next time.
next time. But it's wonderful. I'm so glad our paths crossed. And,
Me too.
And looking forward to your next concert. And I will try and come. I will make a point of coming.
Thank you
to
so much.
the concert in Berlin. And oh God, we didn't even talk about Berlin.
We can talk about it for a few minutes.
That's
if you
a
like.
few. So
Yeah.
you're living here in Berlin now.
I live in Berlin.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of my whole thing about Berlin conversations because
Yeah, let's talk
why
about
are you
Berlin.
here? Because
Why am I here?
So many of us are here now,
Yeah.
and I'm talking about so many musicians and so many creative people. And what brought you to Berlin? I mean, you grew up in Israel.
Yes.
It's kind of people would say, "Why Berlin?" You know, but that's why Berlin. Yeah.
Why Berlin? I have a thing with this place. I can't fully explain it. I think the first time I played here was in 2013. I played at Concerthaus. At that time, I was living in New York City. And I remember just feeling a vibe with the place. I don't have a more articulate way of saying it. I just felt a vibe with the place, something about the sense of freedom and the place of culture and the arts. I mean, that's the best I can do in terms of words, but really it was a vibe. And I had been living in New York for quite some time. For all kinds of reasons, I was ready for a change. It took a little bit of time for that change to happen. And it was, in the end, it was also kind of tied up in the pandemic because I moved to Berlin in August 2020.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing. Although, ironically, I feel like it wasn't perfect timing, but in a strange way, there was something good about the timing because, like all of my musician colleagues, all of our concerts were canceled because of the pandemic. So typically we have a couple of years booked in advance and everything was canceled. The world was falling apart. And I thought, okay, if not now, when? And so I came here. It was a strange time to come here. Things were shut down and so on.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was a crazy time. But I also feel in a strange way it was a good time to come here. In some cosmic way in my personal life and so on. And it was, I'm very glad I made the change. You know, I spent almost 20 years living in New York and I love New York. It has a tremendous energy. But I actually feel, for me at the moment, Berlin is a good place to be. I feel it's a good place to be an artist. I meet such interesting people here, including yourself.
Thank you.
I love that I meet sculptors, choreographers, writers, poets, intellectuals, you know, just interesting people. I find myself, you know, at a dinner party and suddenly you meet, you know, a scholar of Hannah Arendt, or, you know, you fall into a conversation about the various stagings of The Ring. And I love that.
It's great.
It's so great. And I feel...
I think art is really respected in Berlin.
Definitely.
And creativity. And they don't like to pigeonhole people. They just, I find people respect you if you do something creative.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's true. And
A lot less judgmental than New York. I'm
I'm
sorry, but I lived in New York for 45 years. I think I can say that too.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I'm very pleased to be living in Berlin. I like my life here, and I've made wonderful friends. And actually, also for me, as we've mentioned, I grew up in Israel, so I have some friends in Berlin who I've known since our childhood. I also have people who I've met since I've come here. I have new friends. I have German friends. I have European friends, American friends, and so Berlin is also so international and cosmopolitan. And
don't tell everybody.
It's not that great. Don't come here.
Don't come here.
No, it's a good place to be.
Yeah,
And you know, going back to what we talked about, we've only touched on it in passing, that the world is complex these days, and I feel that I'm living in a little bubble here. And that's a kind of privilege. You know, one has to know that it's a privilege, and I'm very aware of it. But there's also something lucky about that. You know, I love my neighborhood. I love my little cafes, and you know, and I love to be able to go to the 3 opera houses and to hear the Berlin Philharmonic, and even collaborate with these great musicians. And to hear Telemann conductor ring cycle. And actually, I've been going to the theater a lot lately, also working on my German. So,
Good luck with that.
I go to the Berliner Ensemble a lot, or the Gorki Theater, and I enjoyed these cultural experiences and just the space to be.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, really wonderful to have you here, and thank you so much for coming by. We have that already, but
It's a great pleasure, Craig. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, I have enjoyed it immensely, and looking forward to the next time. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Benjamin as much as I have. We could do this for hours because it's so stimulating and it's so enlightening. And thank you for tuning in. And of course, subscribe and like and do all those things. But tune in for the next one, and I look forward to seeing you again. And have a wonderful day.